Hi, my name is Olivia Beasley, and I'm going to present to you my ITERS rating scale that I did. The ITERS is designed for center-based child care programs for infants and toddlers up to age 30. The book says that this rating system can be used by directors for program improvement, by the teaching staff for self-assessment, or by agency staff for monitoring, and even teacher training programs, which is kind of what we're doing, I feel like. If I was in a classroom, an infant teacher, or a child that's under 30 months of age, I think this is a really good tool to use because it really does allow you to check yourself. Like, some things that I didn't know would be a problem, like you realize, hey, I need to fix this. And I thought that that was really interesting and a really good pro to this rating scale. The classroom I observed is Wakaba Child Development Center on Kadena Air Force Base in Okinawa, Japan. I completely forgot to take a picture of it, and so I just used a picture I found on Google. Their vision is, it is our vision that each child comes through the door and joins a community of children, families, and teachers engaged in the joy, work, and wonder of childhood. They're open from 5:45 a.m. to 6 p.m. I was able to go in from, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and I went home for an hour. So I had right at about 7 hours of observation, which I think is really good because a lot of this information, I don't think I would have been able to see it if I only observed for 3 or 4 hours. The classroom I was in was I3 is what they called it. It was the infant 3 classroom. There were 8 children enrolled. There was only 7 the day that I went, to 2 teachers, so it's a 4-to-1 ratio. They have a lead teacher that comes in the morning, and then a lead teacher that comes in the late afternoon, and then there's like an assistant. And whenever I was there, the majority of the time, the lead teacher was Taeko. She's been employed at the CDC for 5 years. She was a lead teacher. And Riley, she was employed since June of 2017, and she's an assistant teacher. The ages of the children were 6 weeks to 11 months, and they were all American children. There was a few different races. There was one Hispanic little boy, an African-American child, and the rest were white. More about the CDC. It serves the Department of Defense and military and civilian personnel. And the way that this works is where there's so many children on this island, because we're in the military, it's a thing to do over here apparently. There's not a whole lot of childcare options on base besides like in-home. There's a lot off base, but you know, some people just like the familiarity, is that the word, of being on base, and just the security that this place has. People love that. The way it works to get in is priority levels. Level number 1 is wounded warriors, CDC staff, active duty members with a working spouse, single or dual military people, surviving spouse of a member killed in combat. I didn't know that. That was interesting. Level 2 is a spouse seeking employment. Level 3 is a spouse attending post-secondary school. Or level 4 is just for anybody else, so that may include contract workers that come over here, non-DoD federal employees, anybody like that. But typically for those level 4 people, that's just if there's space available. So if a level 1 person needs space, they can take out level 4 people to make sure that they get those level 1s taken care of. The fees for the CDC are all based on military members' rank, so you go up to E1 to E9 and then officers. Your fee that you pay is based on your rank, and then if you're not in the military, let's say you're a Department of Defense, you work at a school, you're not related to the military really, it's just based on the pay of the parents. So let's get started on the actual rating. I gave indoor space 3, furniture and routine care 2, provision for relaxation and comfort 4, room arrangement 3, and display for children 4. The reason I gave it a 2 for the furniture, routine, and care was there was only 1 rocking chair, despite the fact that there were at most times 2 adults in the room, which I guess you don't really need to be in a chair at the same time, but I just thought this was odd, and there also isn't a lot of room for the older babies to practice walking and crawling without trampling the younger ones. So they had it like blocked off by a little gate, and I just didn't feel like that allowed them to explore the way that they should be able to, and that also affected the physical activity play, which comes up later. It affected that score as well because there wasn't really a lot of room. The display for the children, it was good, but it needed work. I think that they could maybe add more pictures to the walls and things like that, but their overall score was a 3.2. Personal care routines, I was so glad I got to see the greeting and departing. I scored that with a 7, meals and snacks 2, nap 7, diapering and toilet 2, health practices 6, safety practices 7. The infants that are on a bottle, they're on their individual schedule, but the infants who ate solid food, they were on a scheduled time. So I was kind of confused when I was scoring. It said something about, can they eat whatever they want? And I said no, just because if they get hungry and there's not snack out, there's not really much that they could do that I saw. And diapering and toilet, I gave it a 2 just because I didn't see them sanitize the sink that the employees wash their hands with. So after they would change a child, they would then wash their hands. They disinfected the changing table, but they didn't disinfect the sink, which, I think that's kind of defeats the point if you're touching it. But overall, I gave the personal care routine a 5.7. Listening and talking, they did a really good job on this section. Helping children understand language is 7. Helping children use language is 7. And using books, I gave them a 1. So, like I said, they did a great job. And the books would have been a 7, but I didn't see any out, like little infant books for the kids to look at and play with. I looked in the closet because I was just kind of seeing, what all they had. And there was books in there, and I got to witness them reading the children books, but there was no books for the children to see themselves, which resulted in me having to give them a 1 because there was a lack of that. But overall, their average score was a 5. Activities, fine motor a 4, active physical play a 2, art not available because they were too young, music and movement a 7, blocks not available because they were young, and then dramatic play a 4. I talked about this earlier. The setup of the room doesn't really give the children much room for physical play, and because we're located in Japan and Taiko is a local Japanese woman, they did a lot of cool Japanese songs, which I loved getting to be a part of that. Sand and water play, it doesn't affect them because they're too little. Nature and science 1, use of TV, video, and or computer not available or not applicable, and then promoting the acceptance of diversity is 7. There are no pictures or books that represent nature realistically, and like I said, there wasn't really any out anyways, but everything I did see, there was by the door, it said, it had what the weather was. It was all clip art. There was no real pictures of a rainy day or anything like that. And like I said, because the CDC is located in Japan, it's a very diverse center, and they're very accepting to all cultures. A lot of the things they do are Japanese themed just because this is our host nation that we're in right now. So the average score for the activities, I did not include the ones that weren't applicable. It was a 4.16. Interactions was another really their strong suits. Supervision of play and learning 7, peer interaction 7, staff and child interaction 7, and discipline 4. The reason I gave discipline a 4 is because it asks something about did they do all they can to help the children get along. And like I said, just because there's not a lot of room, I didn't feel like there was a lot of toys, and there just wasn't a lot of room for the older infants, and so it caused a problem. I could tell that the older kids would kind of walk over, and the caregiver would have to move them away, which that could all be avoided had there been more room and a space to give them their own space. But overall, their average score was a 6.25. Program structure, another area they were great at. Schedule, I gave them a 7, free play a 7, and then the group play activities and the provisions for children with disabilities were not applicable because group play wasn't really used in the infant classroom, and then none of the children in any of the infant classrooms in the program, I don't think there was any children in the program at all that have been identified with a disability, because over here they don't have the teachers and the services that they do in the States. So if children have a disability, it's a lot of times it's hard for them to get in at the CDC. If that makes sense, they'll put them in like a different program through the school. They don't really let them come to the CDC just because they don't have the staff or the right things that these children need to help them. So their average score was a 7 because I did not count the group play activities and the provisions for children with disabilities. Parents and staff. Provision for parents is 6, provision for personal needs of staff a 2, and provision for professional needs of staff a 7, and staff interaction and cooperation a 4. I asked Riley if the parents usually will come in the classroom and observe prior to enrolling their children, and she said no. But there's also no, the reason I gave provisions for personal staff a 2, there's no place for them to put their personal things. So when I looked in the closet, I noticed that there was a few jackets stuffed in this one area, and so I asked them, hey, where do you keep your things? And they told me there really wasn't anywhere for them to go. I also witnessed this floater come in, and a floater is somebody who will come and cover potty breaks. And the teacher that was in the room seemed kind of annoyed because this floater was from the preschool side of the CDC, and so she really didn't know what to do. And I just think that the teacher that stayed in the class, she just seemed kind of annoyed that they would send somebody that didn't know the routines and such. Parents and staff continued. The staff continuity, I gave it a 1. The supervision and evaluation of staff a 7, and the opportunities for personal growth a 7. When that floater came in, the infants, some of them were freaking out. They were crying because they didn't know who the person was. And like I said, the floater informed me that she's usually a preschool teacher, and there's not really, she doesn't really know what to do. And there also isn't much time for the children to get used to the people in the room. So when the floater came in, she immediately signed in the board. The lead teacher signed out. She went to the bathroom. It was really quick, and so I think that could have been avoided if they had a longer transition period. Average score for this section was a 4.85. The areas of strength I saw were the program structure. Their overall score was a 7. The interactions, the overall score was a 6.25. In the personal care routines, the overall score was a 5.17. I think that this program does have a really well structure, and I loved how they interacted with the children. Areas for improvement, all of these areas scored a 2 or below, so that's something, and some of these things are easy fixes. So using books, nature and science, staff continuity, provisions for personal needs of the staff, active physical play, a diaper and toilet, meals and snacks, and furniture for routine care and play. Those are just things that, furniture for the routine care and play, that might be a little more difficult just because it's harder to make the room bigger. There's not much you can do there, but a lot of those things are easy fixes. The thing that I thought needed attention ASAP was staff continuity. Because the center had floaters covering infant teachers who didn't know infants, a few of the infants were bothered by this, and the floaters didn't really know what to do because they're usually with preschool. I don't think it's very fair for the lead teacher or whoever stays in the classroom to have to kind of do 2 jobs, Not only are they having to take care of the children and the infants, they're having to teach this new person what to do, and that's just not really fair. So I think a way to fix this would be have a floater for each age group. So have a floater for infants, that way that person knows what to do, and that way they can come in the classroom on a regular basis and get to know the children and vice versa. Also, literacy can be fostered in this classroom, like I said, by just adding staff, adding books for the children to look at. They did have books in the closet, however, there's just no books for the children to look at in their free time. And labeling things. When I was in the class, I noticed there were very few labels on things, and I think adding labels will help children from a learned age young where certain things go, as well as get the children used to seeing the words with the pictures and just the different text with each other. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I can't wait to use this in my future with early childhood education. Thank you for watching.